Yes. Okay, guys. Now, I want to especially welcome all of you on the call today as we continue our series of webinars. And I hope that since yesterday you all enjoyed the first session where we looked at the AWS Global Reach and then other interesting things as well. And I also hope that till today you can at least return something from it, at least something that can help you. You understood something, at least one or two things, right? But before we start, I would like to officially introduce myself. My name is Williampa Eric. I'm a DevOps engineer, solutions architect, both a cloud engineer as well, but more of DevOps. My background is actually agriculture. I'm from an agricultural background. So I decided to also transition. I decided to transition, as maybe most of you who are on the call here probably are thinking of transitioning as well. Yeah, so when you've taken that decision to transition, be bold about it. Be bold about it. Yeah, I know that it's a journey that is going to be rewarding. Definitely, it's going to be rewarding. But one thing you must keep in mind is just be ready to face it, right? Be bold enough to face the challenges. It's a worthy journey. But then one thing you must keep in mind is to pay the price, right? Nothing good comes easy. That's what I would like to tell you guys and encourage you that if you're here and you're making that decision to transition, don't give yourself so much time to think, right? Don't give yourself so much time to process and see if this is for you or not, right? Because from my experience, I realized that when I'm about to take a decision, right? In case if you can come on camera, guys, it will really be great so that we can all see each other, right? Yeah, so that we shouldn't be behind the camera. If possible, you can come on camera, that would be great. That would be great. So that it shouldn't be like I'm talking alone. Even though I know you guys, you are there, but at least let's be seeing each other, right? Yeah. So if you are thinking of transitioning, know that it's going to be a worthy journey. And like I was saying, from experience, and from my personal experience, whenever I want to take a decision to do something, when I take so much time to process and think about taking that decision, when I take so much time, I realize that I will always take the wrong decision, or I don't take the decision at all. That is my experience. That's my experience. So for me to decide to embark on this journey, it took me just a week. Just as we are on this call like this, I had this period where I attended this kind of session and it changed my mind completely. I didn't say I have to take some time to observe and see whether this is it for me or not, right? I saw the opportunities that we are on this journey. I saw the challenges and I decided to go for the challenges, embrace them, and I was bold about it. So if you are embarking on this journey, don't give yourself so much time to think. If you want to give yourself so much time to think, you are not going to decide. That's the first thing. And then secondly, you are going to take maybe a different option, and that may be a wrong decision, definitely. All right. Yeah, so that's just one thing I want to tell you guys. Don't think so much about this. If you're already here, it's already a sign that possibly this is for you. Possibly this is for you. So first, it boldly with courage and determination. And at the end of the day, you're going to reap the rewards. So guys, I would like to encourage you especially, and know that this journey is for anybody. People come from different backgrounds, from medical field, from the sociology field, from philosophy, all sorts of it, from accounting, finance, and all of that. And that's my experience actually, because most of people who have come across, they didn't have background in tech. Most of them. Most of people who are cloud engineers today, they don't have any background in tech. They never. It took them just 1 year, that 6 to 7 months to get that transition. And I'll also encourage you guys, if you didn't attend the orientation we had last week on cloud computing, go and listen to that recording. It's powerful. It's going to motivate you. It's going to inspire you. All of those who are on that call, the speakers, you had the medical doctors, you got people from sociology, philosophy, right? Yes. So, guys, if you are here, it's a sign that probably did something for you, and face it boldly. So, without much ado, we are just going to go straight away. I don't know if anybody has something to say, just based on what I've said now, before we write up, because this is going to be a conversation, guys. We are making this to be a conversation, right? We don't want to make it look like a lecture. No, it shouldn't be like a lecture where the teacher comes to class and then he lectures and then you just sit, you copy notes, and then you go back home. No. It's a conversation for us to understand the concept in a simple, easy way, right? Yes, nothing is meant to be difficult. Nothing is meant to be a mystery to anybody. Nothing. If I can do it, then you can do it. If others have done it, then you can do it. So it's a conversation we're going to have here. So I would like to know if anybody has anything to say with respect to what I just said. Guys, let's make it a conversation, right? Guys, feel free. You can just unmute yourself and then you pick up the mic.
No, me this side, I don't have any question.
Okay, Prosper. All right. Okay. Guys, anybody? All right. So we are going to go straight away first with a recap of what was done yesterday, right? Because I remember yesterday we were given an assignment, to come present, maybe just 5 or 10 seconds, guys. Just a recap of what you learned yesterday, right? Just a recap. I will just go by the names I'm seeing on the call. Just 5 to 10 seconds, or maybe 20 or 15 seconds max, right? Just a recap of what you learned, so that the concept, what we're going to discuss today, is going to make more sense, right? It's going to make more sense if we just pick it up from what we did yesterday, and then we continue today. You're going to understand it much better. On the list, I see here Opeyemi Alabi. Just a quick recap of what you learned yesterday. What key points did you capture yesterday from yesterday's presentation? The mic is yours.
So, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you 5 on 5.
Okay, so yesterday I learned about what Dr. Samba said. So he discussed about how AWS is changing, how the cloud computing concept is changing companies.
Okay.
So he discussed about the different data centers. So he also talked about how AWS have different data centers at each business. Yesterday also we discussed about the edge locations. So he tried to tell us how AWS makes cost efficient to companies. So how companies are able to how companies are able to have their facilities not on premises, they're having it on cloud. So I learned how the cloud computing workspace is like. So I was able to learn some of this concept from Dr. Samba's speech yesterday. So thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Prosper, for that nice, interesting recap, right? Guys, this is very, very interesting. I like the way you put it. You just gave a brief review of what was done yesterday. It was very interesting. I'm happy that you got the concept. Because guys, this is the foundation. This is how you lay the foundation on this journey. Without this foundation, every other thing we are going to be talking along the way, it will be difficult to understand. Right? We are laying the foundation. We laid the foundation yesterday. Today we continue to build, right? And you continue to build on this journey throughout your career. So this is interesting. So who else captured something yesterday in yesterday's presentation? Guys, let's have a conversation, right? Let's have a conversation.
Yesterday we talked about the reasons why most of our customers migrate to cloud.
Okay.
The issue of some of them, the reasons are to centralize their database. We also talked about the issue of to analyze their database. It will be easier for them to analyze the data.
Okay.
Some of them are the reasons that some companies, they don't want to buy equipment for them to have those equipment on premise. They want somebody to manage to have serverless equipment so that they just run without
Okay.
knowing the underlying architecture. Then we
Okay.
also talk about AWS Well Architect Framework, which
Okay.
is built on 6 pillars. So Doc said it's up to 8, but he emphasized on 6. That's what
Okay.
I grasped yesterday.
Wow. That's great. Who was that? Sorry, I didn't capture
Prosper.
them. Okay, Prosper. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The first person, guys. The first person. Who was the first person? Sorry, I missed on that. Let me. Okay, the first presentation. The first presenter. Who did the recap?
I forgot the name, but he's here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyways, that's great. That's great. Yes, that is what was done yesterday. Who else, guys? Guys, let's make it interactive. Let's make it interactive. Let's make this interactive, guys. Let's make this interactive.
Yeah, so we also learned that with
cloud
computing, with cloud computing,
Yes.
resources can be accessed anywhere, and we learned that for virtual machines, you can literally just spin or run a virtual machine in the cloud, so you wouldn't have to move to another location to access the virtual machine. You can do it from your remote location anywhere. Yeah.
Great. That's great. That's amazing. Thank you, Sydney, for that great point. Thank you, Sydney. Yes, of course, that's the beauty of the cloud, right? You can access your infrastructure from anywhere, your services, your resources from anywhere, right? That's the beauty of the cloud. That's the beauty of the cloud. Who else again? Guys, who else again?
Sorry to come in again. Once talked about the issue of cost saving based on the type of instances you are going to use. Doc talked about the issue of sports instances, saying that you bet for that instance, the highest payer is going to take that one, which also being used to process batch operations for a short period of time. Then we talked about reserved instances. If we want to run our infrastructure for a long time, you can purchase that one. which has got a bigger discount, but not as much as Sport Instance. Then we talked about the ways in which we are going to assess our customers so that we can move them to cloud. Doc talked about the assessment where we check their financial. Are they able to manage the infrastructure if we move them to cloud? He also talked about TCO. Then he talked about mobilization. Then lastly, migration.
That's great. That's great. That's great, Prosper. That's amazing. Migration. All of this falls under migration. Guys, this is exciting. I'm happy you guys you grabbed the concept yesterday. I'm happy you grabbed the concept. So I think at this level, let's leave at this point. Today we are going to talk about disaster recovery and migration. Disaster recovery and migration. That's what we're going to talk about today. Disaster recovery and migration. That's our topic for today. Finally, I'm going to type. Guys, I hope you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Disaster recovery and migration. Yes, so like I said, we're going to make this a conversation, right? Let's first start with disaster recovery. Disaster recovery. But first, the topic is disaster recovery, but first, what would you say is a disaster, guys? What do you think would be a disaster when we're talking about the cloud? What do you think would be a disaster? What do you guys think is a disaster? Anybody? We're talking about a disaster here. What do you guys think could be a disaster? Okay. That's
Yeah, I think
okay.
that a disaster is anything that causes a system to malfunction at any point in time. It may
Okay.
be as a result of the operation of this particular system itself, or it may be from external sources. Now,
Okay.
thinking about the cloud, a disaster might be considered as an event that causes the whole deployment of a particular of the segments of a cloud to fail. Taking, for example, maybe a database crashing, or an instance shutting down unexpectedly, or something like that.
Okay. Instance shut down. You said the other one is what? After instance shut down?
The database crash.
Database crash. This is amazing. This is amazing. Thank you for that. Who was that again? Sorry, my screen. I need to adjust my screen to see the speakers.
Eugene.
To see the pardon?
Eugene.
Okay, Eugene. Thank you very much, Eugene. Okay. Juliet said a problem. Exactly. It could be a problem, right? A problem. A disaster is a problem. As simple as that also, right? Or it could be an instance that's been shut down, or it could be a database that's been shut down. Yes, all of these answers are very correct. They're very correct. But if we want to go more specifically to when it comes to the cloud, it could also be that it's a virus, right? It could be a virus. It could be a virus. That virus is a disaster. It could be that a virus has maybe infected your system, your infrastructure, right? It could maybe your database, like you said, which could be shut down by a virus, right? or it could be even flood, right? And how would this happen? Yesterday, Dr. Samba talked about availability zones, right? And he said that there are certain things within the availability zone. How did he call them? What are availability zones made of? Who can remember yesterday?
I think the group data centers.
Exactly, the data centers, right? The data centers. And these data centers are in physical locations, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. So if they're in a physical location and flood occurs in that area, or maybe it could be a disaster or a catastrophe, excuse me, it could be a catastrophe, maybe a thunderstorm or something that shuts down that data center. That is a disaster. Another disaster could be within your team. You're working in a team, right? And somebody, if it happens to open a port, maybe a security port, we are talking in this case, maybe a security breach. A security breach, maybe a hacker, for example. That's another thing, security breach. Right? A hacker could get into your system or into your infrastructure. This becomes a disaster. Another thing that it could happen, it could be a technical glitch within your team. A technical glitch. For example, one of your team members mistakenly open a port or maybe mistakenly shut down maybe a particular service, right? Without prior notification or without giving the access to do that, or without giving the authorization to do that. That's a disaster that's occurring within your infrastructure or within your environment. So these are the possible disasters that could occur within your team or within your work environment when somebody employs you as a solutions architect, as a DevOps engineer, as a cloud engineer. So these are some of the things that will occur. These are some of the things. And when you are aware of these things, there are certain measures that you need to put in place, right? There are certain measures that you need to put in place. And for you to make sure that if a disaster occurs, you don't lose your data, right? If a virus infects your system, you don't lose your services or your databases or whatever within your infrastructure. What you need to do, you need to apply certain strategies, right? This so we'll now start talking of disaster recovery strategies. Disaster recovery strategies. Disaster recovery strategies. So you as an architect, you must master this disaster recovery strategy and you must be ready for this. You must be ready, prepare yourself for this. If a disaster is occurring within your environment, what are you going to do? Or even before it occurs, what are you going to do to prevent it from happening? Right? Yes, so one of the disaster recovery strategies we will think of, the first one is what we call backup and restore. Backup and restore strategy. Backup and restore strategy. Backup and restore strategy. As simple as the word sounds, right? As simple as it sounds, the strategy sounds, just from the word backup and restore. Take, for example, you have your laptop, right? And you have some nice pictures in your laptop. And you can't afford to lose these nice pictures. And you're afraid that, oh, what if my laptop completely maybe freezes or crashes, right? Or maybe if somebody steals my laptop, I'm going to lose those pictures. What do? You need to develop a backup and restore strategy for your pictures. It could not even be your pictures, will be some important files, right? Yesterday, Dr. Samba told you guys about how he lost all his medical information when his laptop had a problem. He lost everything. And this was prior to his knowledge about cloud. He never knew about cloud by then, right? Had it been he knew about cloud, he would have taken advantage of backup and restore services in the cloud and taken advantage of them. So with the backup and restore strategy, what we do is that we take advantage of some services that AWS has provided, right? You take advantage of those services. So when we talk about backup and restore strategy, it's simply, we're saying that it is the backing up. It is the backing up of your system, right? And restoring it from that, and restoring it from there, and restoring it from that backup. As simple as that. In case of a disaster, you are doing it in case of a disaster. What if I lose my information? What if I lose my data, my pictures, right? You need to develop a backup and restore strategy. And the beauty of this is that AWS has provided a beautiful, amazing feature. It's called S3, right? It's called S3. AWS provides S3, right, to back up your AWS workload, to back up AWS workload. So this is an amazing feature that AWS provided. So that if you're moving to the cloud, you can take advantage of this S3. You can back up your information within the S3, and you won't lose it. So this is a service that AWS provides. And another good thing about this feature is that it is the cheapest, right? Or about this strategy is that it is the cheapest form of disaster recovery strategy. It is the cheapest among all the disaster recovery strategies. It is the cheapest. It is the cheapest. Now, in which case do you use this backup and restore strategy? You use it depending on how critical, you use any disaster recovery strategy depending on how critical your data is, or how critical your infrastructure, or your system is, right? So because this method is a little bit cheap, you must use it in situations where your data or your system is not very critical. In less critical cases, used in less critical cases. So this is when you use the backup and restore strategy. This is when you use it. Guys, I don't know if this strategy is very clear to all of us. If it's clear, let me just get a yes in the chat. Or if you don't get it very well, I can still explain it again. Okay, great. That's just how simple it is, right? With this strategy. That's how simple it is. That's great. It's great, guys. I'm happy you guys are grabbing it, right? And then another strategy, the second disaster recovery strategy, right, that AWS provides is what we call the Pilot Light. Pilot Light strategy. PR strategy. Pilot Light PR strategy. Pilot Light disaster recovery strategy. Pilot Light disaster recovery strategy. All right. Now, how does this Pilot Light disaster recovery strategy work? What happens is that yesterday, you learned about AWS regions. And you learned that these AWS regions, they are simply physical locations, right? That AWS has designated. For example, you have an AWS region in South Africa, right? And then you have others in the US, in Europe, and all of that. So they are just physical locations that AWS has designated. And within these physical locations, or within these regions now, we have like what I think was Prosper or Sydney, or what was that? He talked about the availability zones, right? So within these availability zones, you have the data centers. Okay. So what happens is that with the Pilot Light strategy, you go to one AWS region, right? You go to one AWS region and you make that region and you set a primary environment in that particular region. I wish I could sketch it, but due to the fact that my iPad has a problem, I couldn't do that. You have two environments, right? You have the primary environment and you have the secondary environment. The primary environment and the secondary environment. Just try to picture this in your mind as basic as it is like this. You have the primary environment and then you have the secondary environment, right? So what happens is that in your primary environment, this is where your system is running on a daily basis, right? You are managing your databases, you are running your servers within this primary environment, right? And this primary environment is running in one region, and you have the secondary environment running in another region, right? So the secondary environment is like a backup. Just picture it this way. The primary environment, you are running your day-to-day operations, but in the secondary environment, it's not acting like a backup, which is in a different region. And why are you doing this? You are doing this because in case there's a disaster that's occurring within your primary environment, right? Your secondary environment will now act like a backup. So critically, when you look at this, what happens is that within that primary environment, you run all your main services. It could be your EC2, it could be your databases, right? It could be whatever services you are running within that primary environment. But now, in the secondary environment, you are simply running by the core services, right? You are simply running by the core services. Take for example, you have two cars, right? You have two cars, and then one car, it's operating very well, functioning very well with the engine, the oil, everything is intact with the tires, everything, right? You're using it day to day on your day-to-day for your daily activities. And then you have another car, right? This car probably doesn't have the tires. Okay, it doesn't have the tires. And why are you having those two cars? The car that is not having the tire is because in case the other car falls down, you will just go to the other car that doesn't have the tires, and then you just get tires and then you put them and then you start using. Right? So that's how the Pilot Light strategy works. You have your primary environment running fully. You are carrying out your day-to-day operations, right? But now you have the secondary environment, which doesn't have all the full services. It has just the core services, right? So that in case there's a failure, you will now go and trigger that secondary environment and set up the full environment to be operating with all the services now in the secondary environment, right? So basically, what I'm saying is that you have two environments, right? That is the primary environment running in the first, or let's say running in the first region, right? Let's say in the first region, right? And then this primary environment runs fully on a it functions very well on a day-to-day basis with all the services, with all the infrastructure fully operating, right? It runs fully with all the services. And services here, I'm talking about EC2, right? When you go deep into a program, you understand what EC2 is. Like yesterday, okay, you talked about yesterday. EC2 is just like your virtual machine. Just like your virtual machine, right? Yes, your virtual machine. So it's like your computer that you have right in front of you, but now it's in the cloud. It has all the properties. It has the capacity, it has the RAM, it has the processor, everything now in the cloud. That's just what EC2 meant, right? So it could be running fully with these services, with EC2, with databases, right? Operating fully. And then you have your secondary environment. Your secondary environment, which is running in another region. In another region, right? This one has core services. It has core services. For example, a core service for, let's say, EC2 is what we call the launch template, right? A launch template is just like, how can I put it? Just like a skeleton. A skeleton, like when you get that skeleton, maybe you just input the other parts, maybe like the flesh kind of, and all of that, right? It's just like a skeleton for the EC2. So that's what a launch template is. When you get deeper into the course, you have a full understanding. So this here, you have just the core services, right? For example, talking about the launch template, a launch template. Again, so the launch template is running in the secondary environment. So much so that if there's a disaster in this your primary environment here, right, you just need to come and trigger other services like the EC2 now to be running in the secondary environment because there's already a disaster occurring in the primary environment. So you just need to trigger it, and that's it. And then you have your environment fully restored and running operational and running fully. So because of this, it makes the pilot-light strategy to be more expensive than the backup and restore. Backup and restore. It makes the pilot-light strategy be a little bit more expensive than the backup and restore because you're having two environments, right, that are running. You have two environments, but there's one that is running fully. But the difference now is that in the primary, which is running fully, you have all the services. But in the secondary, you just have like a skeleton so that in case of a failure or in case of a disaster, you just come and trigger other services to be created in this secondary environment, and you have your environment running without any downtime or with little downtime, right? Yeah, but another thing too with the backup and restore strategy is that the downtime is going to be longer. That's one thing you should note. The downtime will be longer. What I mean by downtime is that, take for example, your WhatsApp, I think it was last year where we had WhatsApp was shut down for some time, right? I think it was for a few hours or so. It was shut down for some time. So that was a downtime. That time when your application or your services or your infrastructure is not running. Users cannot access your application. They can't access your infrastructure. So it is that downtime. So the longer that downtime is, the cheaper your disaster recovery strategy is. But when that happens, is that it's not good for business, right? It's not good because you will definitely lose customers if that happens. If your downtime is longer, you're going to lose customers. So depending on the company and the criticality of the application they have, you are going to decide which strategy to use, right? And also depending on how financial, in terms of finances, right? If they're well to do, then it's choose a strategy which is more expensive, but then it's going to reduce their downtime, right? It's going to reduce their downtime. So that is it for the pilot light strategy. And then we have the other strategies. I won't go deep into that. We have the other strategies. They are known as we have the warm standby. Won't go deep into that, right? But just for you to have a basic understanding of it, it's like this one now. Take for example, you have 2 cars, right? You are at home. One is just maybe like a simple Toyota, right? Just a normal Toyota car, you know, Corolla. Let's say just a Corolla, Toyota. You use it. And then you have maybe a Prado, right? You see that in terms of their sizes, one is bigger than the other, right? Yes, so you're using now the Corolla for your day-to-day activities. Maybe for short distances, maybe going to the market, going to church, you know, and all of that. So this one now you have like a scaled down version of your environment, which you do it for your day-to-day operations, right? And then now you want to embark on maybe on a long journey, or maybe you discover that the Toyota car or the Corolla has a problem. You decide not to use the Land Cruiser. Okay, you decide not to use the Land Cruiser. Maybe you are going on a long journey, right? You pick it up and then you use. So that's how the warm standby works. You simply running a scaled down version of your environment, right? So much so that if there's a disaster, you can now use a higher version. That's just how simple it is. Just compare with a simple, okay? Yes, so all of these cars, they are functioning very well. They are all functioning very well. There's no one that would having a breakdown. They're all functioning very well. So this makes this method to be a bit more expensive, right? It makes it more expensive, yeah, than the pilot light strategy and the backup and reserve strategy. And then the other one is known as the active strategy. Active TR strategy. So for this one, right? This one, you have 2 environments. All of them, they're operating fully. They have all the services. There's no one that is like a scaled down version. Okay, sorry, Eugene. I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so okay, let me take back on the warm standby again.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Oh, thank you. No. So I said for the warm standby, you have 2 environments, right? You have 2 environments. You have 2 environments, which one is acting like a backup. Remember that we're talking about backup. Remember that we're talking about recovery strategy here. So one is acting like a backup, where you have the small scale version of the environment which you are using for your day-to-day operations, right? So now, when a disaster occurs, you go and take the highest, lower environment or the scaled down version environment has maybe witnessed a disaster, right? So that's what happens. And I was comparing this with a Toyota car. You have a Corolla and then you have a Land Cruiser. You use a small Toyota Corolla for your day-to-day operations, maybe going to the market, going to church, and all of that, right? And then probably it has a breakdown. That's when you now go and pick up the Land Cruiser and then you use. Or maybe you are going on a long journey, you now go and pick the Land Cruiser and then you use, because it can sustain you on a long journey. So same with the warm standby, you have a scaled down version of the environment you are using for your day-to-day operations, right? And then you have the higher, the scale up version of your environment, right? Which you could use in that when the disaster occurs, or maybe you need to do some heavy operations within your environment, right? So that's how the warm standby. I don't know if you got me now. Just let me know in the chat.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. So now I was talking about the active GR strategy, right? This one now you have two environments, right? They are all running on full capacity. This one, they are all running on full capacity. You have primary environment, which is running on full capacity, and you have the secondary environment running on full capacity. What if there's a disaster that occurs in that primary environment, which you are using for day-to-day activities, right? But the second environment is just acting like a backup. You're waiting that if a disaster occurs, you now go and start using or operating in the secondary environment. So if a disaster occurs in the primary environment, you will just go and trigger the second environment to be running. You don't need to do any changes again, because it's always ready in case of anything. Active. Right? All the two environments are active, but one of them is acting now like the backup. So because all the two environments are running in full capacity, it makes this strategy to be a little bit expensive, right? It makes this strategy to be more expensive than the other strategies, because the first thing is that it has little or zero downtime. Little or zero downtime. There will be no downtime. Your application will be running whether a disaster is occurring or not. Your customers are not going to feel it, right? Your customers are not going to feel anything, and you stay in business because you've developed a system where two environments are running, and another one has witnessed a strategy, has witnessed a disaster. But because the other one was actively and fully in operation, it automatically picks up, right? It's like when you go to, if you're going to a hospital, maybe in a hotel, you have, in case of electricity failure, right? Or maybe power outage, the hospital will definitely have a backup generator. And there are some generators that, if there's a power outage, right, they will need to go and manually put on that generator. You get it? They will need to manually go and do that. But in this case, with the active, what happens is that you have those other automatic generators that are always ready in case of any power outage. If there's no electricity, it automatically picks up. It's like they are always ready. Those generators are always ready. They are automatic, right? So that's how the active strategy works. So guys, those are the basic disaster recovery strategies you are supposed to master as a solutions architect, right? As a DevOps engineer, as a cloud engineer, if you are called up to work in any environment. So, and this is going to prove that you are a subject matter expert in this field. Guys, I don't know if these strategies are very clear. If they are very clear and well understood, just let me know in the chat. If not, let me know so that I can break it down again. Guys, is it clear? Just put a yes in the chat. Hello, guys. Great. That's great, Omar. Okay, Eugene is asking, which recovery strategy is recommended for a hybrid environment? This is an amazing question. This is a great question. So now, okay, Emma is asking, please explain the two-part, please. Okay, let me finish with Eugene, then before I come to your question, Emmanuel. So which recovery strategy is recommended for a hybrid environment, right? So for those who, let me just break it down for people who have not understood what is meant by a hybrid environment, right? It's an environment where the company is operating both on-premise, right, and then in the cloud, okay? You have a company then that's operating, let's say, in AWS cloud, and then at the same time, they're operating on-premise. So they could be doing this for different reasons, right? Depending on the type of workload that they have, right? Or sometimes it could be because there are some legacy applications that they don't want to move to the cloud, right? So they will decide to prepare or to keep those applications on-prem, right? So the strategy they will use will depend on first, maybe the amount of data or the amount of downtime that they can tolerate, right? The amount of downtime that they can tolerate. Because if they are operating, maybe still operating on-premise, is probably, maybe they don't care much about downtime. They can tolerate a longer period of downtime if they are operating on-premise, right? So in that case, if they are not bothered much about the downtime, they would probably go for the pilot light strategy or go for the backup and restore strategy, right? They won't care so much about those expensive methods, the warm standby and the active. You get, but if there's so much care about downtime that they don't want to lose their customers, they would go for the warm standby or the active, right? And if they are also financially stable, to set two environments running. So that would depend on the also, it will also depend on if it's a startup or established. Please, can you hear me? Eugene, I don't know if that's answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Emma, you're asking I should explain two-part. Which one two-part, please? Is it pilot light gear strategy? Is that what you mean? Please do let me know. Okay, the pilot light strategy, right? Great. I said for the pilot light strategy, you have two environments, right? And these two environments, they are all running in two different regions. Remember, we talked about AWS regions yesterday. Okay, we talked about AWS regions yesterday. So you have one environment that is running in, let's say, US East 1, or let's say let's just say US region, right? For example, just call it that way, US region. You have one environment running there, and then you have another environment that is running, let's say, in the South African region. Okay, you have all of these that are running in the different regions. And the environment in the US is like the primary region. When I say primary region, it means that it is a region where we are running our day-to-day operations. That region is hosting our infrastructure where our applications are running, where we are hosting our database that we're using on a day-to-day basis. That is the primary environment because we are using it every day, right? And this environment has all the services. It has EC2, it has databases, right? It has S3 that we have taken advantage of, right? We have leveraged most of the AWS resources so that this environment is running fully. Because why? We are having our day-to-day operations in this particular primary environment. But now we're scared that there's going to be a disaster. Let's go to South Africa region and set up another environment there so that in case of any disaster, the South African region is going to act like a backup. That is going to be in our secondary environment, right? But the difference now is that the South African region is not going to be running on all the services, on all the same services as the environment in the US or as the primary environment. The services there will not be in full operation, right? They won't be in full operation as those in the primary environment. We are just going to create something like a skeleton. Let me just put it that way, right? So is that if there's any disaster, we just go and trigger the full services to be running. And I gave an example of you owning 2 cars, right? All of these cars, they are all maybe the same model. You have one that is you are using for your day-to-day operations, right? Maybe for office work, market, church, and all of that. And then you have one in the house, parked in the garage. This other car, it doesn't have maybe the tires, right? It doesn't have the tires. But you just keep it there. Let it be there. Let it just act like a backup. In case the car you're using for day-to-day operations maybe runs down, or maybe the engine knocks down. What are you going to do? You just go and fill the tires in the one that is standing in the house, right? And then you start using. I don't know if you got me. Is it clear now, Emmanuel? Please, if it's clear, just let me know. Great, great. That's just it. That's just it. Okay. Yes, that's just how the pilot light works. Right? You don't in the secondary environment, you just have like environment that is running your core services. You know, but it's not in operation. But what are you waiting for? You're waiting for a disaster. If a disaster happens, you just go and trigger that environment to have all the services fully running. Right? That's just how it works. So guys, that is it for disaster recovery strategies. And on that, we are going to end our session on this disaster recovery. Right? I don't know at this point if there's any question before we get into migration. We're also just going to talk about migration briefly, just briefly, so that we should end today on time. Guys, is there any question? Hello, guys. Is there any question? Just drop it in the chat, or if you have anything to say, just if you have any comment, any reaction, let me know. Right? Like I said, this is a conversation. We are not doing a lecture here or kind of thing. I'm just trying to break everything down so that you grab it to the as simple as and possible as you can. Right? Okay, if there are no questions, we are going to proceed with migration, right? We're going to proceed with migration. Migration. When they talk about migration, guys, when they talk about, okay, let me see some of this out chat. Okay, please, I can't discuss it as fast. Sorry, Emmanuel, can you repeat? Can you unmute yourself? I didn't get what you wrote very well. Emmanuel, sorry, I can't. Can you rephrase maybe what you wrote? Please, I can. if you can say it on mute and say it. I can't read it very well. I don't understand. Okay. You said you came in when I already talked about the first part. Okay, you said that means you missed on. Let me go back. Okay, while I'm here, can you just indicate to me what level so that I should know? Is it when I started talking about disaster? We talked about we just tried to discuss what is a disaster, right? That was the first thing that we talked about. Right? And we said a disaster is just any bad thing, right? Or a problem. Like Julius said, it's a problem. Okay, so the S3 part. Okay, backup and restore. Right? Is it what you're saying? Backup and restore strategy? Okay, great. So with backup and restore, right? It's just very simple. Just very simple. Backup and restore. You back up and then you restore. Right? You have your laptop in front of you, and you are scared that you lose some data or your information. Right? What do? You go to Google Drive, your Google Drive, and you back up that information there. Right? It's okay, Emmanuel. It's okay. That's why we're here, so we can just break everything down for you to understand. So with the backup and restore strategy, like I'm saying, it's like you back up your data or you back up your pictures in your Google Drive. Right? Just upload, just transfer them, you just put them there. Right? So that if somebody steals your laptop, or if the laptop should crash, you won't lose your information, you won't lose your data or anything, or your files. So you just go and you drop them into your drive. Right? It's the same thing with backup and restore strategy. So what happens is that AWS has provided a feature called S3. So this S3 is a storage service. Right? You can store huge volume of indefinite amount of terabyte of information of data in S3, and it will never get exhausted. So that's a service that AWS has provided, right? So you just go and you back up your data there, you back up your information there. And it's a cheap method. And you must use it in less critical cases. Okay? You must use it in less critical cases. So that's just the simple thing. But it's not the bad thing about it is that it has a longer downtime. If your application should crash or if your application should witness a disaster, for you to get the application running, it's going to take you a longer period of time if you backed up your information in S3. That's what's going to happen. It has a longer downtime. It has a longer downtime. In the sense that when you back up that information, right, for you to get your normal environment running, it will take you time for you to, or even to retrieve the information from that backup and restore. For you to retrieve is going to take you time. So you must use this one when you are not working with critical applications or critical systems or critical workload. So that's when you use the backup and restore strategy. So the key word here is you use S3. That's the key word. It's mostly used with S3. I don't know if it's clear now, Emmanuel. Great. That's amazing. Okay, guys, let's move on to migration. Right? Migration. When we talk about migration, guys, what comes to your mind when we talk about migration? When you just saw the topic migration, what came to your mind? Or I think yesterday you must have heard about migration, right? So what comes to your mind when you hear about migration? Just a few lines in the chat, or maybe you can unmute yourself and say, so that we just move straight away and talk about it. Migration. Okay, living from one place to another. Exactly. You're living from one place to another, right? You're living from one place to another. When it comes to the cloud, where are you living from? Right? Now in the cloud, where are you living from? You are moving from on-premise to the cloud. You move from on-premise, move from on-premise to the cloud. Exactly, Taiwo. Exactly. Moving of resources from one place to another. Exactly. That is it. Exactly. That's just amazing. Moving of resources, right? Moving of resources. It could be applications, it could be a database, or it could be an entire infrastructure. They are moving. Now, any company that you see today operating in the cloud, right? They were originally operating on-premise or in a private cloud environment. Any company you see now operating in AWS cloud environment. Any company. Companies like Netflix. Netflix was originally operating on-premise. Yes, they were originally operating on-premise. So it's not long that they moved to AWS cloud. So currently they're operating on AWS cloud environment. Right, so they had to migrate. They had to migrate from on-premise to the cloud. So that is migration. And before a company moves to the cloud, don't just get up and then you move to the cloud, right? For example, Netflix did not just wake up one day and say, hey, we are moving to the cloud. No, it doesn't happen like that. Migration is a whole journey. It's a whole journey that is never ending. It's never ending. Even when a company has moved to the cloud, they continue to migrate and move. It's never ending. It can take 10, 20 years for a company to fully move to the cloud. Right? It's not a one-day thing. It's not a 1 week, 1 month. No. It takes time for companies to migrate fully to the cloud because they are dealing with huge amount of data, huge amount of workload, right? And they need to do a lot of checks here and there, So the company or the organization has to go through what we call different phases, right, before they move to the cloud. And the first phase that a company will go through before they move to the cloud is what we call, you guys talked about yesterday with Dr. Samba, assessment phase. The first phase of migration is assessment phase, right? It's assessment, the assessment phase. So imagine you want to embark on a trip. Just imagine migration as embarking on a trip. Just picture it in your mind. You're moving from one town to another, from one city to another, from one country to another. Let's consider that in this our case, we are moving from one city to another by road, right? It's a road trip that we're taking. So guys, just stay with me on this. Once you understand this, what I'm explaining here, you understand migration, and that's it. Migration is like embarking on a trip. Imagine you're embarking on a trip, right? Before you embark on a trip, what do you do? Guys, what do? You want to embark on a trip, let's say, if you're in Nigeria, me from Lagos to Onitsha, or if you're in Cameroon from Bamenda to Douala, or wherever you are, South Africa, me from Johannesburg to Cape Town, right? Wherever you are, you want to embark on that trip, the road trip. What thing do you do? What assessment would you do? What do we assess? Guys, let me just get some quick, straightforward answers in the chat. What do you do?
You ask yourself how much you have.
Exactly, plan. Okay, Taiwo talk about plan. Great. Plan. Okay, plan out the trip. Your cost. Okay, Umar, you just said it again. Cost. How much is it going to cost you? You ask how much. Yes, that was Prosper. Sorry if the person who spoke, please.
Eugene.
Okay, Eugene. Okay, what was the answer again?
All right, I said cost.
Okay, exactly cost. Okay, great. How much? That's it. Right? Guys, what else again? What else? What do you do? Okay, we can just move on, right? This is fine. When you have this concept, when you just have this understood this way, right, it's going to make your understanding of migration very easy. So before you hit the road, you have to assess the cost. You have to plan. You have to put things in place, right? So it's the same in the cloud. You have to assess your current infrastructure, right? For the cloud, what do? You assess your current infrastructure, right? Current infrastructure. You also assess the cost. You guys, we've all talked about it, right? You plan. But planning planning here is tricky because it's just another phase too, right? We haven't entered planning yet. We are still assessing. We are still doing that assessment, right? So for now, we can just mark it. Let me see. Okay, let me just mark it planning. Yeah, because it's a whole phase on its own. Planning is a phase. We are still assessing, right? We are still just doing assessment and seeing what we're going to incur in terms of the cost, right? We're doing all of that before we hit the road. And then we also even have to assess our data. Our data. What else? Our applications. We have to assess them. Their status. We have to assess them. Right? You have to do all of this.
I think you also have to assess the support.
Exactly, support. Exactly. Maybe you are embarking on that journey, you need an assistant driver if you're one driving the car. You need to assess if you have somebody. In the cloud, it's the same. It's the same. And the beauty of this phase is that AWS has provided you with what we call the Cloud Adoption Framework. Right? It's like a framework. And this framework has Cloud Adoption Framework. Cloud Adoption Framework. We call it CAF. Right? CAF. This CAF here is not it's not the African Football Federation, right? It's not the African Football Federation like what they call it in French. So CAF here is a Cloud Adoption Framework. And this Cloud Adoption Framework has some basic tools, right? It has some basic tools that will help you in order to do the assessment. So there are two tools that the Cloud Adoption Framework has. It has the Cloud, we call it the Cloud Assessment Readiness Tool, right? Known as CAD. That's how it's known, as CAD, right? And how do you use this tool? You can use it now to particularly assess your application, your infrastructure. You can even assess the opportunities, right? You could be embarking on that journey. Maybe you can grab some food on the way, right? Or maybe get something different or special along the way while you're going. So you use this Cloud Assessment Readiness tool to assess the opportunities of you moving to the cloud. It could be the opportunity of maybe benefiting from cost, right? Maybe leveraging on the scalability in the cloud, or maybe leveraging on the security of the cloud. So you use this Cloud Assessment Readiness tool to do that assessment, or to look into those opportunities that are available for you in the cloud before you embark on the journey of migration. So this is how you use the CAD tool. And then the second tool within the Cloud Adoption Framework is what we call the Migration Readiness Assessment to the MRAT, Migration Readiness Assessment Tool, right? So this one now is more of, you want to now access the compliance, the regulatory compliance. For example, before you even embark on that journey, you need to ensure that maybe you have your license to drive, right? You need to access do you have the license to drive? Or maybe if you are getting into a public car, you have your identification documents, right? Those regulatory compliance documents, you need to have them, right? So here you also need to assess your migration strategy. This one, you're assessing your migration strategy. Maybe you are thinking of maybe changing your mind and taking by the train, right? You need to do you use this tool now to do that assessment. So we're going to see the different strategies that you can use to migrate. So now, for now, we're just talking about the phases, and the first phase is the assessment phase. Guys, is this phase clear? Is it understood? If it's clear, let me just get a yes in the chat. Or if you can comment or add something, let me get a reaction in the chat, guys. Is it clear? Yes in the chat. Let me just get a yes. Great, Emmanuel. That's great. I'm glad it's sinking, right? It's sinking. It's great. This is great, Umar. I'm excited to see that. That's amazing. So, guys, if it's clear, just put a yes in the chat, guys. Let me know that we are flowing, we are going along, right? Like I said, we are embarking on a trip. This is the migration. On this trip, I want us to go along to carry it together. Let's do the assessment together, right? And see what are we carrying along the way. Okay, we are still doing the assessment. Now, the next phase of the migration, right, is the planning. Planning now. So like I said, planning is a phase on its own. We are now planning. We are now planning. So when we are planning, now what do we need to do? Now that we know where we stand, right? We know about the cost, we know about the support, we know about the benefits, the opportunities while we're embarking on this journey of migration. Because of the security, we are going to benefit from costs, and all of that. Now we know our position. Let's plan, right? What are we going to do? We are going to determine our goals. As we're embarking on this journey, we are going to determine our goals. For the cloud, when you're migrating, during the planning phase, what you do is that you determine which applications you want to migrate. You determine apps you want to migrate. You determine the application you want to migrate. This is the planning phase, right? Because when you're migrating, you don't migrate all the applications at once. The best strategy will always be that you migrate the less critical applications first. Why will you do that? Guys, why do you think that you will start migrating the less critical applications if you are migrating an application? Why do you think you should start with the less critical? Guys, what do you think? Why do you think you will start migrating with the less critical applications?
Do that so that you do not
yes,
disrupt any ongoing production or anything that you are currently using. That's critically important.
Pardon, sorry, I didn't get you. Can you come again?
Yeah, I was saying that you migrate the less critical ones first because you don't want any major disruptions in your current production. Yes.
Okay. So saying that don't want any major disruptions. Okay, yes, if you want to, yes, let's make it a bit very clear. You don't want any major disruptions, right? In this case, what are we talking about? That major disruption, what are we talking about here? Right? What could be that major disruption that we're talking about? because you just want to migrate a less critical application.
Yes, maybe something that serves clients on a daily basis. Some sort of service that serves clients. Yes, you may not want to disrupt any of that.
Okay, great. Okay, you're saying that you don't want any major disruption that will reduce, let's say, just say performance, right? Reduce the performance.
Yes.
That will reduce or influence, that will impact user performance. Let's be good. Let's be very technical here, right? You don't want any disruption that will hinder or impact user performance, right? Okay, Emmanuel said to test the environment. Exactly. That's another good point. To test the environment. You're still trying to test the environment. This is very interesting. That's a very good response, Emmanuel, too. That's a very good one. Because you don't want to carry a critical application and you're migrating first. If you get on the cloud and realize that things are not the way you expected, and you see your applications crashing, imagine that you took but the most critical application. What happens? You lose, you crash, right? And that is very important. That is very, very important. And once you crash, you're out of the game because you didn't do your planning very well. You need to always start with the less critical applications. This is very interesting. So during the planning too, like you said, one of the things we should plan is our timeline. You need to estimate the timeline, right? For how long are we going to drive? We are embarking on this journey, this road trip. For how long are we going to drive from one city to another? So that we know what amount of fuel, right, we are buying, we are purchasing. You need to know that, right? You need to know. So you need to understand before you embark on your journey. You need to know how long it will take you to migrate to the cloud. So like I said, migration is a journey. It's not a one-week thing, right? So just keep that in your mind. If you're asked to migrate workload, depending on the volume of the workload, it will take you years. So based on the volume, you will be able to say, hey, you see what? Based on this workload, based on my evaluation, it's going to take us maybe 10 years or maybe 5 years for us to fully migrate this workload to the cloud. You keep that at the back of your mind and make it very clear to your team because you've done your evaluation. You make it very clear to your team because you've done your assessment. You've seen that this is what is going to happen. Right? Exactly. And then you also consider the distance. What kilometer of road coverage are we going to embark on? So all of these factors you consider. Now, the next phase of our migration, of our road trip, right, is now the migration proper. Now we have embarked, we have done the assessment, we've done the planning, right? And now we've embarked on that journey, on the road trip. When we're embarking on the road trip, now, let's say I'm not the driver, I'll tell you guys, yes, you need to buckle up, right? Buckle up. Yes, it's time to hit the road. And it's time to carry that workload. Like Taiwo was saying, we are moving our resources. It's time to carry those resources to the cloud, the database, right? The infrastructure, the applications. It's time now to carry. How are we going to do that? That is the question we are going to answer in this migration phase. The migration proper. How are we going to do it? Right? So, depending on your strategy, right, you might use different methods. We are going to see the different migration strategies, right? Just in brief, yes, but depending on your strategy, you are going to use different methods. Okay, you are going to use different methods. So the different methods that we have that we could use to migrate, we have rehosting. This one now is like, we just carry our application the way it is. We carry it without doing any changes, no changes at all. Just carry it from on-premise and we place it in the cloud without doing any changes. That is rehosting. We call it lift and shift. Lift and shift. Lift and shift. Oh. Lift and shift. That is rehosting. We could use this strategy, right? Another strategy we could use would be refactoring. Refactoring. With this one now, when we carry our application, right? Before we carry it, we need to do some changes, right? So that it fits in the cloud. We just do a little bit of changes. That's how we just call it refactoring. Just do a little bit of changes, just a little bit. Or you can call it re-architecting. It's also known as re-architecting. Re-architecting. That is refactoring, right? Then another method is re-platforming. Re-platforming, right? Re-platforming. So this is another method that we use. We'll see detail as we go along the way. And then we have another one known as rebuilding. 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 Right? So each approach has its own benefits and challenges and all of that. So you use each of them based on the kind of application and based on maybe the company, right? And based on what level they are in their migration. It could be that they are still on-premise, they are still fully on-premise, right? It could be a greenfield company, like they haven't been to the cloud before. So based on that, you will know which strategy to use, right? Yes. And then when you've fully migrated now, we've moved to the cloud, right? We've moved to that, our new location. We've moved to our new city, right? What next? Do we say that we are done? No. No, we need to do what we call the validation phase. We now get into the validation phase. Validation phase. Guys, let me just try to wrap up. We almost passed the time. So the validation phase now, we'll just talk about it briefly. So what happens is that we are now at our destination, right? We don't just need to unpack our things like that from the car. No, we don't just do that. We took a private car and we're driving and going. So when we arrive, we need to do some checks and see maybe we didn't lose anything. Maybe we need to check the tires, check the engine, just check the car briefly, to make sure that everything's intact. It could be that while we are driving, we lost part of our luggage on the way, right? It could happen. So we need to check that our luggage everything's intact. So it's the same in the cloud. When you've migrated your workload, right, you have to check whether you didn't lose some of your resources along that part of migration. You could be migrated and then you forgot maybe some particular instance, right? Or maybe some database. You could forget it. So you need to do those checks, and you do this within the validation phase. Within the validation phase, right? So just picture it like you are now in the cloud, and then you need to make sure that your applications and then your data work as expected in the AWS environment. Okay, and we do it in this way. So what you do here, you do testing. You test your application, testing. You test the testing, let's say test the performance. You test the performance of your application, right? You check the security. You check the security, right? And then what else could you check again? You could check the what could you do again? You could check even the functionality, right? How the applications are functioning. Functionality. You check the functionality. So these are the checks that you do when you arrive. You check to make sure that everything is functioning as you expected. Okay, Eugene says in the long run, be sure of cost optimization. I was exactly be sure of cost optimization. This is very, very important. Thank you for that, Eugene. Be sure of that, right? Yes, and this comes now in our next phase, which we call the optimization phase. This is the fifth phase. Okay, optimization phase. We call the next phase optimization phase, right? What do you do now? Now we've moved to a new location. Okay, we've gotten to a new house, right? What could we do? Maybe we've reached and then we realize that maybe the security lights, they are not functioning well, right? Or maybe we need to add some CCTV cameras, or maybe we need to re-architect, or maybe put gutters or fix one or two things. You know, you do that during this optimization. Okay, you kind of try to reinforce other features within the house. And if you're in the cloud, what you do is that you try to fine-tune the environment, right? This is where you're talking about costs. You now leverage on AWS services or resources, right? You leverage on AWS services. You get. And then what do you do again? One of the things you can leverage, you can improve the performance. Improve the performance, right? You can improve the security. Like I said, you can set more CCTV cameras in the cloud. You can improve on the security, take advantage of security features that AWS has given you, improve security, right? Because during the validation, we checked and we realized that the security is not properly set up. So we are going to put in more security features. We take advantage of those features that AWS has provided, right? I think we are going to look about security. I think that will be on Friday. We are going to go deep and look into which are those features that AWS has provided for you to leverage on in order to secure your environment, right? Because guys, not everybody wants to move to the cloud. And the first thing they will tell you is, or the company will tell you is, they are not sure of the security. That is always the main issue. Sometimes it's never about the cost. Most often it's always about the security. How secure is the cloud that they're moving to? Right. So on Friday, you guys are going to go deep dive into it and understand the different services AWS has provided for you to take advantage of when you're moving to the cloud. Okay. So now you've moved to the cloud. This is what you need to take advantage of. On Friday, you're going to see that. So the next phase, when you now optimize your environment, what you do is that you have the operation phase. Operation phase. And operation phase is just simple, right? We've settled in our new site, in our new town, in our new home. You know, we are not staying there. What do? We wake up in the morning. You need to clean the house, right? You need to cook food, right? You need to, just do house chores and all of that, right? We need to maintain the house. It's just the basic thing. And it's not different from the cloud. So same as when you're in the cloud, during the operation phase, what you do is that you need to update your servers. You know, update and manage servers. Update and manage servers, right? You need to monitor the performance. Monitor the performance from time to time, right? You need to be checking how your resources are performing. You know, in terms of the security, is everything intact? How are the application, how are they performing? what is the user experience, right? So it's the same. Like when we move to that our new location, that our new site. Okay, we need to monitor from time to time. We need to just go behind the house and check what is happening behind the house, you know, to make sure that there are no stray animals or things coming into our home, our new home. Okay, so basically, these are the 6 phases of migration. These are the standard 6 phases of migration that you have when you're moving to the AWS cloud environment. Okay, and like I said, remember that cloud migration is not a one-time event. No, it's always an ongoing journey, right? Yes. So as technology is evolving and new tools are being developed, you know, we need to keep on taking advantage of this to optimize our cloud environment as solutions architects, you know, as DevOps engineers, as cloud engineers. So guys, it's here that we've come to the end of our presentation today. I will have gone deeper to the different strategies, right, to talk about rehost, refactoring, and all of that. But I hope that at this high level, you've understood it, right? Yeah, so if you want to go deep dive and practically implement all of this and understand it deep inside, right, and be bold to talk about it, yes, that's why you need to embark on this journey, right? You embark on this journey, you have a full understanding of all these concepts. And they're just easy to understand, as I've explained. When you go deep dive, you just need to go deep dive and you understand everything in a simple way the way I just explained. So guys, I hope you've all understood what I've said. And if you well understood, just let me know in the chat. Just let me a yes in the chat if the concepts are well understood. Or if you have a question, just kindly raise up your hand. If you have a comment or so, just let me know. Guys, was everything clear? Any need for more explanation? Is everything clear? Let me just get a yes in the chat. Great, 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 great. Okay, Eugene. You're welcome, Eugene. Okay, Umar, that's great. That's great. That's great. Guys, just let me know. Let me know in the chat. Okay, great, Sydney. That's great. That's great. That's great. Okay, Juliet. All right. No worries, no worries. I think the recording is there. Anytime you're going to get a recording very soon, right? When we get the recording, we're going to drop it on our platform, so you can just take your time wherever you are. At any time, you can just listen to the recording, right? Yes. So, yeah, I'm glad you learned a lot. I'm glad you learned a lot. Sure, sure. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, guys. I don't know if there's any other comment or any other reaction from your end, right? If there's any reaction from your end, just feel free. You can come on. You can unmute yourself, right? You can unmute yourself and want to just say hi to somebody. Just any reaction, right? I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'm glad. I still you all enjoyed this. This great. So, guys, is there any reactions? Okay, Eugene. Okay, that's great. Hi, Juliet.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for this knowledge that you poured on us. Though I joined late, but I was able to gain a lot. I already touched CAF. I heard about the adoption framework, yes, and the migration strategies. And those are things I've been like, I need to deep dive into. So I'm happy that you touched on them. I'm sure that maybe before the webinar goes to the end, I'll be able to, I'll be satisfied with my expectations.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
That's great. I'm happy. I'm happy for that feedback. I'm happy that you understood. Yeah. Okay. Guys, okay, we'll leave it here at this level. So tomorrow is another day, right? Tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow we are going to look at let me see what that's going to be. Let me look at that. Just a few minutes. Let me check what we're going to have tomorrow. Okay, so tomorrow we're going to look at content delivery, right? We'll look at content delivery. Yes, so this course is also going to be very interesting, right? It's also going to be very interesting because why? Tomorrow you're going to understand how when you take up your mobile phone, right? When you pick up your mobile phone and you go to an application, let's say YouTube, right? When you go to YouTube and then you open a page, you open maybe a video, and then you are listening to it or you're watching it. Or for example, when you get on a website, that process of you typing the website on your browser, putting it, right? And then pulling information from that website. How does it get to your phone? What is the communication? What happens between your phone and the website? What happens between your phone and the application? Right? You're going to understand how that happens. It's going to be very interesting, guys. So tomorrow, don't afford to miss this. Right? You can't afford to miss it. So tomorrow is also going to be another exciting day. So hoping to see you tomorrow. So have a good night, have a good day, wherever you are, and bye-bye.